19 orphaned girl thrown into ferocious Mustang horse's pen by bullies. What happens next will shock you. In a quiet rural town, Lila Wilson, a 15-year-old orphan, faces relentless cruelty from wealthy bullies who see her as an easy target. But when they trap her in a pen with a ferocious Mustang, untamed and wild, something extraordinary happens. Will Lila crumble under fear, or will she uncover a strength no one saw coming? Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below. The first light of dawn had yet to breach the horizon when Lila Wilson stirred in her small room at the Wilson farm. At 15, she carried the weight of a life marked by loss, her world confined to the creaking wooden walls of an old house, its leaky roof groaning under the whispers of the wind. The floorboards sighed as she slipped into her worn boots, their soles thin from countless treks to the Maple Square farmer's market. Wrapping herself in Grandma Maggie's faded sweater, Lila felt a fleeting warmth, a remnant of family ties that lingered like a half-remembered dream. Her eyes drifted to the photograph on the wall, her father James in his military uniform, his smile frozen in time. He'd been gone nearly 2 years, lost to a distant battlefield, and the ache of his absence clung to her like morning dew. She touched the military medal tucked in her pocket, its cold metal, a silent promise. "I'll do good today, Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile courage she clung to. Outside, the Wilson farm unfolded in the pre-dawn chill, a patchwork of struggle etched into the landscape. Frost dusted the lettuce patch, the leaves glistening like fragile jewels in the dim light. The chicken coop sagged under years of neglect, and the parched pastures stretched toward the horizon, a testament to the family's dwindling fortune. Lila stepped into the garden, her breath clouding in the crisp air, and began picking lettuce with care, her cold fingers selecting the freshest leaves for market. Each leaf felt like a vow, echoing her father's words from years ago. "Every plant's a promise, Lila, keep it." The memory of his voice, steady and warm, tightened her chest, and she gripped the leaves harder, determined not to let Grandma Maggie down. Maggie's cough had worsened and the medicine wasn't cheap. The farm's debts loomed, a shadow Lila couldn't outrun. The garden was small, its dry soil cradling a few pumpkins alongside the lettuce, and the distant crow of a rooster broke the morning silence, grounding Lila in the rhythm of rural life. She paused, pulling her journal from her pocket, its pages worn from nightly confession. With a stubby pencil she scribbled, "Dad, I'll do good today." The words were her anchor, a way to steady herself against the pressure of being the family's provider at 50. She tucked the journal away, her resolve hardening like the frost beneath her feet. Back inside the kitchen was a haven of simplicity, its chipped wooden table and cracked earthenware bowls, telling stories of better days. Lila stoked the wood stove, coaxing embers from last night's fire, and set a kettle to boil for Maggie's mint tea, a remedy for the old woman's persistent cough. The stove crackled, sending wisps of smoke curling upward, and the scent of dried mint filled the air, a small comfort in their sparse world. Maggie sat in her creaky rocking chair, her face lined with years of toil, her eyes bright with pride as she watched Lila. "You're up early again, child," she said, her voice hoarse but warm, a faint smile masking the pain of losing her son James. She coughed, then added, "Your daddy loved that lettuce patch, planted it with his own hands." Her words were a shield hiding the grief that lingered in her heart. Lila stirred the tea, her hands steady despite the weight she carried. The memory of her mother Clara, lost when Lila was just 3, flickered in her mind. She clutched the embroidered handkerchief Clara had left behind, its floral pattern worn but precious, a tether to a mother she barely knew. The responsibility to be strong pressed down on her, but the handkerchief grounded her, a silent encouragement to keep going. She poured the tea, setting it before Maggie, who reached out with a trembling hand. "You're James's girl, all right," Maggie said, her smile softening the ache in Lila's chest. "He'd be proud." Lila tied the lettuce bundles to an old cart, checking the metal in her pocket one last time, its familiar weight a reminder of her father's courage. She stepped outside the farm, hushed, except for the rustle of wind through the brittle grass. The rising sun cast a golden glow on the oak tree James had planted, the family tree, a symbol of hope that stood firm despite their struggle. Lila gazed at the pink-streaked sky, imagining her father watching from above. "I'll sell it all today," she murmured, vowing to buy Maggie's medicine and chip away at the farm's debts. Maggie appeared at the door, her shawl pulled tight, and handed Lila a small cornbread loaf. "You're your parents' pride, Lila," she said, her eyes glistening with faith and worry. Lila nodded, gripping the cart's handle, her heart steeled for the day ahead. The kitchen of the Lila fanned the embers, coaxing them into flame. She heated water and mixed cornmeal, shaping it into patties on an old cast-iron skillet, the scent of cornbread wafting through the air. At 15, Lila bore the burden of keeping the farm afloat, her thoughts heavy with the need to sell every lettuce leaf at Maple Square to buy medicine for Grandma Maggie's worsening cough. The pressure sat like a stone on her chest, but she pushed it down, focusing on the sizzle of the cornbread. The kitchen, with its scarred wooden table and chipped earthenware, was a testament to their poverty, yet its dim light from a single window held a quiet warmth, a flicker of home. Maggie sat by the stove, her cough rattling as she watched Lila work. "Mind those city folks at the market, Lila," she warned, her voice frail but firm. "They're not all kind." She paused, her eyes distant, then added, "Your mama Clara loved that market, always came home with story." The mention of Clara, gone since Lila was 3, brought a tremor to Maggie's voice, her grief for her daughter-in-law a wound she hid to protect Lila. Lila's hand went to the embroidered handkerchief in her pocket, its floral stitches a fragile link to her mother. "I feel her with me, Grandma," she said softly, the handkerchief urging her to be strong, as if Clara's spirit lingered in its threads. The firelight danced on Maggie's face, and the scent of mint tea mingled with the cornbread, grounding them in the intimacy of their rural. Lila set the cornbread and tea on the table, glancing at the old clock ticking on the wall. The market loomed, and with it, the fear of not selling enough to cover the farm's debts. She thought of her father, James, his voice echoing, "You're my light, Lila." 2 years since his death, the pain was a constant shadow, but she clutched his military medal, its weight a vow to keep going. Outside the window, the misty outline of Oak Ridge Road stretched toward Maple Square, a path fraught with challenge. "I'll make it work," she whispered, looking at the sky, imagining James watching, his presence a spark of courage for the long day ahead. Lila packed the lettuce into a canvas bag, tying Clara's handkerchief around her wrist like a talisman. She stepped outside, the farm quiet save for a distant dog's bark and the soft glow of sunrise on the pasture. Maggie followed, pressing a tin cup of tea into Lila's hands. "You're stronger than you know," she said, her eyes brimming with trust and a trace of fear. Lila nodded, her resolve firm as she set off down Oak Ridge, the weight of hope and duty heavy but bearable, fueled by the love of a family she carried in her heart. The morning sun climbed higher as Lila Wilson pushed her creaky cart down Oak Ridge Road, the red dust of the dirt path clinging to her worn boot. At 15, she carried the weight of her family's survival, her heart tethered to the hope of selling every lettuce leaf at the Maple Square farmers market. The old oaks lining the road cast dappled shadows, their gnarled branches swaying in the gentle breeze, while the chirping of sparrows filled the air with a fleeting sense of peace. The dry pastures on either side stretched endlessly, a reminder of the Wilson farm's struggles, but the warmth of the rural dawn softened the edges of her worries. Lila paused to wave at Mr. Jenkins, who was mending a sagging fence, his weathered face breaking into a kind smile. "Morning, Lila," he called, his voice rough but warm. Mrs. Carter, balancing a basket of eggs, nodded in return, her eyes crinkling with quiet support. Their kindness bolstered Lila, but her hand slipped into her pocket, clutching her mother's embroidered handkerchief, its floral stitches faded from years of touch. Clara, gone since Lila was 3, seemed to whisper through the fabric, "Keep trying, my girl." The thought steadied her, pushing back the self-consciousness she felt in her patched clothes. Lila's heart lifted as she reached Maple Square, the market buzzing with life. Vendors called out from stalls laden with apple pies and cheddar cheese, their voices mingling with the soft twang of country music drifting from an old speaker. The air carried the sweet scent of baked goods and the earthy tang of fresh produce, a vibrant tapestry of small-town America. Lila set up her modest stall, arranging the lettuce with care, each leaf a promise to buy medicine for Grandma Maggie's cough. She flashed a shy smile at passers-by, her voice soft but earnest. "Fresh lettuce, just picked this morning." A few locals stopped, praising her hard work and dropped coins into her tin, but the weight of unsold bundles gnawed at her, and she glanced at her mended shirt, its stitches a stark reminder of her poverty. Doubt crept in, but her father's words echoed, "Don't let anyone make you feel small, Lila." James, lost to a battlefield 2 years ago, was her anchor. She straightened, determined to keep smiling, her resolve as firm as the sun-warmed earth beneath her feet. The market's rhythm faltered when a middle-aged woman in a sleek dress approached Lila's stall, her eyes scanning the lettuce with disdain. "I don't buy from country folk," she sniffed, her voice sharp as a blade. "This stuff's too rusty." The words cut deep and Lila's cheeks burned as she lowered her gaze, her fingers finding her father's military medal in her pocket. "Dad wouldn't let them win," she whispered to herself, fighting back tears. The crowd pulsed around her, their curious stares amplifying her sense of smallness, while the aroma of apple pies seemed to mock her struggle. Then a group of well-dressed men near the cheese stall turned their attention to her, their laughter harsh and mocking. "Look at the mud girl," one jeered, pointing at Lila's dusty boots. "Selling weeds are we?" The taunts stung, rekindling the pain of losing her parents, but Lila gripped her mother's handkerchief, its soft fabric grounding her. She stood taller, her voice steady as she called out again, "Fresh lettuce, anyone?" Her heart ached, but she refused to break. As the market grew busier, the country music drowned out the men's laughter and sunlight bathed Lila's stall, casting a golden glow on her lead. She sold a few more bundles, her hands trembling but her spirit unbroken. In her mind she repeated, "They laugh, but I won't give up. For Dad, for Mom." She glanced at the sky, imagining James's reassuring nod, his presence a shield against the cruelty. Then, Harper, her school teacher, approached, her warm smile a beacon in the crowd. She bought a bundle of lettuce saying, "You're harder working than most adults, Lila." Before leaving she pressed an old copy of Anne of Green Gables into Lila's hand. "You're stronger than you know," she said, her words igniting a spark of hope. Lila clutched the book, her resolve renewed, ready to face whatever the market might bring. The hum of Maple Square was shattered by the roar of 3 sleek black SUVs, their polished chrome glinting as they rolled to a stop, kicking up clouds of dust that swirled around the apple pie stall. The market paused, heads turning as Ethan Carter and his group of wealthy men stepped out, their crisp shirts and polished shoes a stark contrast to the locals, weathered overalls and rusty pickups. Ethan's smirk was sharp, his eyes sweeping over the town with disdain. "This backwater still exists," he scoffed, his voice dripping with mockery, as if the market were a relic unworthy of his presence. The crowd whispered, their gazes a mix of curiosity and unease, while the SUV's dark windows loomed like silent sentinels. Ethan's arrogance masked a deeper unrest, the pressure of his family's legacy weighing on him, a void he filled by belittling those he deemed beneath him. The men strode into Frank Miller's bar, a weathered haven of scratched wooden floors and the faint scent of beer, where locals gathered around a battered pool table. Ethan's voice cut through the air, demanding imported beer and rare steaks with the authority of someone accustomed to obedience. "Make it quick," he barked, tossing a bill onto the counter. Frank, the bar's owner, forced a smile, his hands steady as he poured drinks, but his heart sank. Years ago, a wealthy man had swindled his father out of their family land, and Ethan's dismissive gesture, a flick of the hand like shooing a fly, stirred that old wound. "You folks here for business or pleasure?" Frank asked, his tone polite but strained, hoping to bridge the gap. Ethan ignored him, laughing with his group, calling the bar a pigsty under his breath. Yet, as he glanced at the locals' quiet solidarity, a flicker of unease crossed his eyes, quickly buried beneath his bravado. Outside, the market buzzed with tension, the men's laughter overpowering the gentle strum of country music from the market speaker. Vendors paused, their hands still on baskets of cheese and bread, whispering about the stranger's ostentatious display. Miss Carter, selling eggs nearby, shook her head, muttering, "Trouble's coming with those city types." Her words carried the weight of experience, but fear kept her silent, like others who sensed the disruption the men brought. Miss Harper, standing by Lila's stall, jotted notes in a small journal, her brow furrowed. "This is a lesson in pride," she murmured, planning to share the men's behavior with her students, a cautionary tale about respect. The market felt smaller under the men's presence, its warmth dimmed by their scorn. Inside the bar, Ethan leaned back, sipping his beer, his laughter ringing out as he surveyed the room like a king inspecting his court. The sunlight streaming through the windows caught the sheen of his watch, a glaring contrast to the bar's rustic simplicity. His sense of power swelled, each mocking word a balm for the emptiness he refused to acknowledge, a life of wealth that offered no meaning. Yet beneath his swagger a nagging doubt lingered, would his dominance hold in a town bound by unspoken loyalty? The locals watched, their silence louder than his laughter, as Maple Square braced for the storm the wealthy men had brought. The midday sun hung high over Maple Square, its warmth doing little to ease the knot in Lila Wilson's chest. As she pushed her nearly empty cart past Frank Miller's bar, the market's bustle pressed in around her, a swirl of voices and laughter that felt distant after the morning's humiliations. At 15, Lila was used to the weight of curious stares, but she quickened her pace, hoping to slip unnoticed through the crowd. The bar's weathered wooden door stood ajar, spilling a faint glow of yellow light onto the dusty street, while the muffled twang of country music seeped out, mingling with the clink of glasses. The air carried a sharp tang of beer, and the occasional crack of billiard balls echoed from within, setting Lila's nerves on edge. She kept her eyes down, her boots scuffing the dirt, until a sharp voice sliced through the noise. "Hey veggie girl, come here," Ethan Carter called from the bar's doorway, his tone commanding and cruel. Lila froze, her heart pounding, her cart jerking to a halt, as the crowd's chatter faded into a tense hush. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, his smirk as polished as his city-bought shirt, his eyes glinting with the thrill of a game. "Let's see that bag of yours," he said, his voice dripping with mockery, as if Lila were a sideshow act for his amusement. The crowd parted slightly, their gazes fixed on her, amplifying the weight of his words. Lila's hands trembled as she clutched the canvas bag, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just lettuce, sir," she said, her throat tight. The words met with a roar of laughter from Ethan and his group of wealthy men inside the bar. "Lettuce? That's cow fodder," one jeered, his voice booming over the clatter of billiard balls. The taunt cut deep, stirring the raw pain of her father's absence. James, gone 2 years to a battlefield, had been her shield against such cruelty. Lila's fingers found his military medal in her pocket, its cold metal grounding her. Dad wouldn't fear them, she told herself, forcing her chin up, though her cheeks burned with shame. The bar's dim interior loomed behind Ethan, its smoky air and flickering lights, adding a menacing edge to the moment, as if the walls themselves were complicit in her humiliation. The tension thickened as one of Ethan's companions, a man with slick back hair and a predatory grin, stepped forward, his polished shoes crunching the gravel. He reached out, his fingers brushing Lila's arm as she fumbled to open her bag, his touch sending a jolt of fear through her. She stumbled back, her eyes wide, her breath catching as memories flooded in, her father's voice soothing her after a schoolyard taunt. "You're stronger than their words." Lila. She gripped her mother's embroidered handkerchief, Clara's only legacy since her death when Lila was 3, its faded flowers a lifeline against the panic threatening to spill over. The crowd outside the bar fell silent, their eyes darting between Lila and the men, the yellow light from the bar casting harsh shadows on her pale face. Ethan watched, his smirk unwavering, seeing Lila as nothing more than a toy for his entertainment, yet her steady gaze defiant, despite her fear sparked a flicker of unease in him, a challenge he hadn't expected from a girl in patched clothes. He masked it with a laugh, but the doubt lingered, sharp and unwelcome. Lila's voice, small but resolute, broke the silence. "I need to keep selling," she said, her words firm despite the tremor in her hands. She pushed her cart forward, head bowed, the weight of their laughter pressing down on her. The market's noise resumed, the country music swelling to drown out the men's jeers, but Lila felt utterly alone, a solitary figure amidst the crowd. She clutched the handkerchief tighter, her mind repeating, "They make me feel small, but I won't let them win. For Dad. For Mom." The sun beat down, indifferent to her pain as she moved on, her heart scarred but unbroken, determined to face the rest of the day. Inside Frank Miller's bar, the air was thick with the scent of grilled steak and cigarette smoke, the neon lights casting a garish glow over the group of wealthy men, huddled in a corner booth. Ethan Carter sipped his imported beer, his eyes gleaming with a restless hunger for control. "This town's too dull," he declared, his voice cutting through the low hum of country music from an old radio. "We need some fun to shake things up." His companions chuckled, their laughter sharp and eager as they leaned in, the dim light flickering across their tailored shirt. The booth felt like a shadowed council chamber, its isolation from the bar's regulars amplifying the secrecy of their plan. Ethan's smirk widened, his mind already spinning a cruel game to cement his dominance over the backward town. Ethan's gaze turned cold as he pitched his idea, his words laced with malice. "That veggie girl, let's put her in the Baker Farm's Mustang pen," he said, his voice low and gleeful. "See how fast she runs from that beast." The group erupted in laughter, their glasses clinking in agreement, but Ryan, the youngest among them, hesitated, his fingers tightening around his beer bottle. The memory of being bullied as a child flashed in his mind, a pang of guilt twisting in his gut. He stared at the table, avoiding Ethan's piercing stare, the neon lights highlighting the tension in his jaw. Ethan's motive was clear, to prove his power, to drown out the emptiness of a life spent chasing his father's approval. But Ryan's silence drew Ethan's attention, and a sharp glance forced a reluctant nod from him, the weight of peer pressure silencing his conscience. The plan took shape as the men whispered,
settling on the Baker Farm's Mustang pen, home to a ferocious stallion known for its untamed fury. "It's perfect," Ethan said, his voice a mix of excitement and menace. "We'll film it something to show the boys back in the city." The radio's country tune faded into the background, overwhelmed by their cruel laughter, the neon glow casting harsh lines on Ethan's face, revealing the ruthlessness beneath his charm. Ryan, tasked with setting the stage, felt his stomach churn, the memory of Lila's frightened eyes in the bar haunting him. He nodded again, his agreement a betrayal of the guilt gnawing at him, his hand trembling as he reached for his phone. As the men rose from the booth, their laughter echoed, a stark contrast to the bar's sudden stillness. The clack of billiard balls resumed, and the neon lights flickered, as if signaling the trouble brewed. Ethan led the way out, his stride confident, oblivious to the storm his plan would unleash. The bar settled back into its rhythm, but the air felt heavier, the quiet hum of the radio a faint warning of the chaos to come. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in fiery hues of red and gold, as Lila Wilson trudged along Oak Ridge Road, her empty cart rattling behind her. The weight of the day's humiliations at Maple Square Market clung to her, each mocking word from the wealthy man a bruise on her heart. At 15 she felt the world pressing down, but her steps were steady, driven by the need to get home to Grandma Maggie. The dirt road dusted with red clay stretched through parched pastures, the air heavy with the stillness of dust. The silhouette of Baker's farm loomed in the distance, its sagging barns and weathered fences, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper unease. A lone oak stood sentinel by the road, its gnarled branches swaying in the evening breeze, a quiet witness to the rural life Lila knew so well. She tightened her grip on the cart, her thoughts on Maggie's medicine, when a voice broke the silence. "Hey kid," Ryan called, stepping out from the oak's shadow, his tone falsely warm. "Drop my handkerchief in the horse pen, help me grab it, and I'll pay you." Lila's heart skipped, her hand slipping into her pocket to touch her father's military medal, its familiar weight a tether to James, gone 2 years to a battlefield. She remembered Maggie's warning, "Be careful of strangers, Lila," but the promise of money for medicine was too tempting, and Ryan's boyish face seemed harmless enough. "Okay," she said, her voice small, her eyes wary as she followed him toward the Baker farm. The road felt lonelier now, the chirping of crickets, a faint hum against the growing knot in her stomach. She clutched her mother's embroidered handkerchief, Clara's only gift since her death, when Lila was 3, its faded flowers a silent plea for strength. Ryan's steps quickened, his casual chatter fading as they neared the pen, and Lila's instincts screamed caution, but the hope of easing Maggie's cough pushed her forward. The horse pen at Baker's farm was a rough enclosure of splintered wood, its air thick with the scent of hay and damp earth. The fading sunlight slipped through gaps in the planks, casting slanted beams that illuminated a massive Mustang stallion in the corner, its muscles taut, eyes wild with untamed fury. Lila hesitated at the fence, her breath catching as she saw the beast's restless pace. Ryan pointed to a shadowed corner of the pen. "It's over there," he said, his voice too smooth, his eyes avoiding hers. Lila stepped inside, her boots sinking into the soft dirt, her heart pounding as she scanned the ground for the non-existent handkerchief. The gates slammed shut behind her, the dry crack of the wooden latch echoing like a gunshot. She spun around, panic rising, as Ryan's silhouette retreated, his laughter mingling with the jeers of Ethan Carter and his group, who had materialized outside the fence. "Got you, veggie girl," Ethan called, his voice cruel and triumphant. Lila's fingers fumbled for Clara's handkerchief, her whispered plea, "Mom, help me," lost in the thud of her racing pulse. The men's laughter grew louder, a vicious chorus that drowned out the evening cricket. "Run, mud girl," one shouted as the Mustang Valor, as Lila would later name him, reared, his hooves kicking up clouds of dust, his piercing neigh a warning of danger. The pen felt smaller, the air suffocating as Lila backed against the fence, her shoulders brushing the rough wood. She realized the trap too late, her voice trembling as she cried, "Let me out." The men only laughed harder, their silhouettes dark against the crimson sunset, their faces twisted with glee. Lila's fear was a living thing clawing at her chest, but her father's words surfaced through the panic. "Face it, with your heart, Lila." She gripped James's medal, its edges digging into her palm, and resolved not to let terror win. Outside, Ryan stood apart, his hands clenched, the men's laughter grating against his conscience. Lila's wide, frightened eyes haunted him, stirring memories of his own childhood taunts, but Ethan's presence loomed and he turned away, guilt a bitter taste he couldn't swallow. Lila stood alone in the pen, her breath shallow, her eyes locked on Valor's blazing gaze. The men's voices faded, their jeers a distant hum as the world narrowed to her and the stallion. The pen was silent now, save for Valor's heavy breathing and the soft whistle of wind through the wooden slat. She was trapped, her fate hanging in the balance, her courage the only shield against the danger ahead. The dust in the Baker farm pen swirled like a storm as Valor the ferocious Mustang stallion advanced, his eyes burning like coals in the dimming light. His powerful hooves struck the ground, sending tremors through the earth, each step a thunderclap that shook Lila Wilson to her core. At 15 she stood frozen, her back pressed against the splintered fence, her heart hammering so fiercely she thought it might burst. The pen was a cage of shadows, the last rays of sunset slipping through the wooden slats, painting Valor's sleek coat in hues of fire and blood. The air was thick with the scent of hay and fear, the fennel crunching under the stallion's weight, the world beyond the fence, a blur of cruel laughter. Lila's knees buckled, her breath coming in sharp gasps, as she whispered, "Dad, what do I—" The memory of James, lost to a battlefield 2 years ago, was a lifeline, but the terror was overwhelming. She fumbled for her mother's embroidered handkerchief, Clara's faded flowers a fragile anchor, her trembling lips forming a plea. "Mom, please." Valor's nostrils flared, his head tossing as he snorted, the raw power of his presence filling the pen. Yet something in Lila's wide, tear-gilled eyes gave him pause, a flicker of shared pain that slowed his advance. She saw it, that fleeting hesitation, and clung to it like a drowning soul to a rope. The men's jeers outside, "Come on, run," were a distant roar, their voices irrelevant as Lila faced the beast. Her mind raced, Maggie's words echoing, "Speak with your heart, child." She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper, trembling but clear. "I don't want to hurt you, Valor," she said, naming the stallion for the courage her father had embodied. The word felt right, a tribute to James, a bridge between her fear and the wild spirit before her. She raised a shaking hand, her eyes never leaving Valor's, her breath hitching, as she willed herself to stay calm. The pen grew quieter, the wind's soft howl and the rustle of fano under Valor's hooves, the only sound. Lila's voice steadied, her words a gentle stream. "We're both scared, aren't we?" She saw her father in the stallion's fierce eyes, a strength tempered by wounds, a mirror to her own grief for James and Clara. The fear that had gripped her began to shift, transforming into a quiet empathy, as if she were speaking to her father across the years. Valor lowered his head, his breathing heavy, but less frantic, his steps slowing as he sensed her sincerity. Lila's hand hovered inches from his muzzle, her heart pounding, but a resolve unbroken. The men's laughter faltered, their shouts fading into stunned silence as they watched, incredulous from beyond the fence. The sunset's last light dimmed, cloaking the pen in twilight, the air charged with a fragile connection that defied the chaos outside. Then Valor's muzzle brushed Lila's hand, his warm breath a shock that sent a shiver through her, but not of fear, of relief, of wonder. She stood still, her fingers trembling against his coarse hide, feeling the pulse of life beneath. The stallion's eyes softened, no longer blazing but deep, reflecting a shared understanding of pain.
The men outside were silent now, their plan unraveling in the face of something they couldn't comprehend. Lila's lips curved into a faint smile, tears spilling down her cheeks, as she felt her father's presence, as if James stood beside her, his courage flowing through her veins. Later she would write in her journal, "Today I found Dad and Valor." The pen was a sanctuary now, its shadows gentle, the moonlight beginning to seep through the slats, casting a silver glow on Lila and her unlikely ally. Lila stood taller, her hand still resting on Valor, a quiet strength blooming within her. She realized she was more than the orphaned girl they mocked, more than the fear that had nearly consumed her. The metal in her pocket felt lighter, James's pride a tangible force urging her to hold fast. The pen was still, the night's embrace a promise of resilience, and Lila knew whatever came next, she would face it unbroken. The silence in the Baker farm pen was profound, broken only by the soft snort of Valor, the Mustang stallion as he stood beside Lila Wilson. Outside the fence, the wealthy men's faces twisted with disappointment, their cruel game thwarted by the inexplicable calm between girl and beast. "This is boring," one muttered, his voice low as the group shifted uneasily, their laughter replaced by grumbling. The crowd that had gathered, drawn by the spectacle, stood hushed, their silhouettes bathed in moonlight, the wooden fence gleaming silver under the night sky. The air was alive with the hum of crickets, the cool breeze carrying the scent of hay and earth, a stark contrast to the tension that lingered. Lila, Her hand still on Valor's muzzle found her voice steady despite the ordeal. "Open the gate," she called, her tone firm, cutting through the men's murmurs. Reluctantly, one of them shuffled forward, the wooden latch scraping as the gate creaked open, the sound sharp in the quiet night. Lila stepped out of the pen, her head bowed but her spine straight, refusing to meet the eyes of her tormentors. Her boots crunched on the gravel, each step a defiance of the fear that had gripped her. The moonlight cast her shadow long and solitary across the Baker farm's pasture. The night's chorus of insects, a faint comfort against the ache in her heart. Valor watched her go, his dark eyes fixed on her, a soft whinny escaping him as if acknowledging their shared resilience. Lila's fingers closed around her father's military medal, its weight a reminder of James's courage, and she felt a surge of relief tinged with pain. "They can't break me," she whispered, her resolve hardening, though the sting of their cruelty lingered, a wound she carried in silence. The crowd parted, their faces a mix of awe and shame, as Lila moved toward Oak Ridge Road, her cart left behind in the chaos. Ryan lingered by the fence, his phone clutched tightly, its screen glowing as he recorded the scene, his hands shaking with the weight of what he'd done. The men's laughter had grated on him, each jeer a reminder of the times he'd been mocked as a child, powerless and small. Guilt churned in his chest, urging him to act, and filming Lila's ordeal felt like a small atonement, a secret rebellion against Ethan's dominance. He avoided her gaze, unable to face the girl whose courage had undone their plan, his eyes fixed on the ground as the crowd began to disperse. The wind carried the faint rustle of leaves, and the moonlight illuminated Lila's retreating figure, a lone silhouette against the vast night, her strength a quiet rebuke to his cowardice. Lila walked toward the Wilson farm, the road stretching dark and endless before her, the stars above a silent witness to her trial. The pain of the day, of the men's cruelty, of her own fear pressed heavy, but she held fast to the memory of Valor's trust, of her father's pride. "They wanted me to fall," she thought, "but Valor and Dad kept me standing." The night enveloped her, the cool air soothing her bruised spirit, as she carried her wounds home, a girl transformed by the strength she'd found in the face of danger. The moon hung low over Oak Ridge Road, its pale light casting long shadows, as Lila Wilson dragged her weary feet through the red dust, her empty cart rattling behind her like a mournful echo. At 15 she felt the weight of the day's ordeal at the Baker farm pen, pressing down, each step a battle against the pain that threatened to swallow her. The cart abandoned in the chaos of her escape was a silent reminder of the cruelty she'd endured, its creaking wheels a faint protest against the quiet night. The Wilson farm loomed ahead, its weathered wooden house shrouded in darkness, save for a single flicker of lamplight glowing through a cracked window. The sagging roof and peeling paint spoke of years of hardship, yet the familiar silhouette was a beacon of refuge in Lila's storm-tossed heart. The pastures around it lay still, the air thick with the scent of dry grass and the soft hum of crickets, a rural lullaby that did little to soothe her wounds. She pushed open the door, her boots caked with dust, her eyes red and swollen, and collapsed into Grandma Maggie's arms, her sobs breaking the silence like shattered glass. Maggie's embrace was fierce, her frail arms a fortress against the world's cruelty, though her own cough rattled in her chest. Lila clung to her, the embroidered handkerchief of her mother Clara crushed in her fist, its faded flowers a lifeline to a woman lost when Lila was through. The terror of the Mustang pen, the men's mocking laughter, and the miraculous bond with Valor poured out in her tears, her body shaking with the weight of it all. She felt small, fragile, as if the strength she'd summoned in the pen had drained away, leaving only the raw ache of vulnerability. The kitchen was a haven of worn simplicity, its chipped table and earthenware bowls bathed in the soft glow of a wood stove fire. The flames crackled, casting dancing shadows on Maggie's lined face, her eyes glistening with a mix of pride and sorrow as she held her granddaughter close. "Oh, my girl," Maggie whispered, her voice hoarse but steady, "you're safe now." She hid the pain of losing her son James beneath a tender smile, determined to be Lila's anchor in this moment of despair. Lila's voice broke as she recounted the ordeal, her words tumbling out in halting gasps. "They tricked me, Grandma," she said, her eyes fixed on the flickering fire, "locked me in with that wild Mustang. I thought I'd die, but he didn't hurt me, Valor. He just looked at me like he understood." Maggie's grip tightened, her eyes clouded with emotion as she stroked Lila's hair, the weight of her own grief for James, lost to a battlefield 2 years ago, pressing against her heart. "You were brave, Lila, just like your daddy,"
she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in it. He faced danger in the war, never backed down. You've got his fire. The firelight illuminated Maggie's face, its warmth a stark contrast to the poverty of their surroundings, the scarred table and sagging walls a testament to their enduring struggle. Maggie's words kindled a spark in Lila, a flicker of resolve amidst her pain. She nodded, vowing silently to be stronger, to protect the woman who'd raised her through years of loss. Maggie's gaze softened and she began to speak of the past, her voice a quiet thread weaving through the crackle of the fire. After your mama passed, I thought I'd break, she said, her hands trembling as she clasped Lila's. Clara was gone and I had you, just a tiny thing to raise alone. Poverty clawed at us but I kept going. For you, for James. She paused, her eyes drifting to the photograph of James in his military uniform hanging on the wall, his smile a ghost of better days. The memory of her son's death was a wound she hid, her strength a shield for Lila's sake, though her fingers shook as she spoke his name. The room felt smaller, its worn furnishings and chipped paint steeped in the family's history, the oak tree visible through the window, standing tall under the moonlight. Lila followed Maggie's gaze, her heart swelling with determination. I won't give up, she whispered, for Dad, for you. The tree's silhouette was a promise, a symbol of resilience that anchored her resolve. By the wood stove's glow, Lila opened her journal, its page as a sanctuary for her thoughts. The wind howled outside, rattling the roof, but the moonlight spilled through the window, illuminating her work. Grandma says I'm like Dad, but I'm scared I'm not strong enough. She paused, her fingers tracing the edges of James's metal, its weight a reminder of his courage. The fire's warmth seeped into her, and she felt her father's presence, as if he were watching from the starlit sky, urging her forward. The pain of the pen, the men's cruelty, lingered like a bruise, but Lila's resolve hardened. They won't break me, she wrote, her handwriting steady, a vow to rise above the darkness. The night stretched on, the farm's silence saved for the fire's soft crackle, and Lila closed her journal, her heart set on a future where she would honor her family's love with every step. The morning after Lila Wilson's ordeal in the Baker farm pen, the small town buzzed with whispers, the story of the orphan girl and the wild Mustang spreading like wildfire. By sunrise, the Maple Square coffee shop was alive with the aroma of fresh waffles and brewing coffee, its worn wooden tables crowded with locals, hunched over steaming mugs and glowing phone screens. The clink of spoons against ceramic mingled with the hum of conversation, as news of Lila's encounter flickered across social media, shared in hurried texts and grainy photos snapped by onlookers. The shop's windows, fogged with morning dew, framed a quintessential slice of rural America, where gossip was as much a currency as the dollar. Some called Lila's survival a miracle, their voices tinged with awe, whispering that she must have a special gift to tame such a ferocious beast. Others, skeptical, leaned back in their chairs, insisting it was dumb luck, their words laced with the same disdain they'd shown her at the market. But beneath the chatter a shift was brewing, the town's heart stirred by the courage of a girl they'd underestimated. The coffee shop's air grew thick with competing voices, some sharp with mockery. That veggie girl thinks she's a horse whisperer now, a grizzled farmer scoffed, his laughter echoed by a group at the counter, their jeers cutting through the waffle-scented warmth. The comments stung, echoing the taunts Lila had endured, but not everyone joined in. Across the room, 10-year-old Lily sat with her mother, her wide eyes bright with wonder, as she listened to the story. I want to meet her, she whispered, clutching a crayon-drawn picture of a horse, her voice soft but fervent. She's brave, like in my books. Lily's admiration was a quiet spark, a sign of the change Lila's actions might ignite. On social media, the local group's feed exploded with comments, from snide remarks about Mud Girl's stunt, to curious questions about her bond with the Mustang. A blurry image of the pen shared anonymously fueled the frenzy, its shadows hinting at the drama that had unfolded under the moonlight. At the town's high school, Miss Harper, Lila's English teacher, stood before her class, her voice steady as she recounted the story, not as gossip but as a lesson. Lila Wilson faced fear and came out stronger, she said, her chalk scratching the board as she wrote. The classroom, with its scuffed desks and faded posters, felt alive with the weight of her words, students scribbling notes for an essay on bravery. Harper's praise was a beacon, cutting through the town's mixed reactions, urging the young to see Lila not as a victim, but as a symbol. Outside, the coffee shop's chatter spilled onto the streets, the market's bustle resuming under a bright noon sky. But the story lingered, a thread weaving through the town's daily rhythm, pulling some toward empathy, others toward scorn. In Frank Miller's bar, Ethan Carter lounged with his group, his smirk sharp as he heard the rumor.
"That girl's a joke," he sneered, his voice loud over the clink of beer bottles, dismissing Lila as a town clown. But beneath his bravado a flicker of unease stirred. He knew the story's spread could tarnish his family's name, a risk he hadn't foreseen. Ryan, sitting silently beside him, gripped his phone. The video of Lila in the pen burning a hole in his the memory of her defiant eyes haunted him, rekindling his own childhood shame, and he toyed with the idea of sharing the footage, a reckless act that could upend Ethan's control. Fear of retaliation kept him quiet, his silence a heavy weight as the bar's neon lights flickered, casting harsh shadows on his troubled face. The rumors continued to ripple, touching even those who'd once turned away. Lily's quiet awe, shared with friends at recess, began to shift perception, her admiration a seed of change. The town pulsed with life, its streets lined with pickups and market stalls. But the air carried a new undercurrent. The distant chime of the First Baptist Church's bell rang out, a solemn note that seemed to herald a turning tide, as if the town itself sensed the transformation Lila's courage might bring. By noon, a rusty pickup truck rumbled into town, its bed piled with ropes and carrots kicking up dust. As it parked outside the Maple Square coffee shop, Hank Thompson, a grizzled horse trainer with weathered hands and a quiet intensity, stepped out, his boots crunching on the gravel under the blazing sun. The truck, its paint chipped and faded, was a relic of countless years on rural roads, a fitting chariot for a man who'd spent decades taming wild stallions. Hank's eyes, sharp beneath his worn hat, scanned the bustling street as he entered the coffee shop, the scent of waffles greeting him. "I'm looking for the girl from the horse pen," he said, his voice low but commanding. Drawing curious glances from the locals, they pointed him toward the Wilson farm, their voices buzzing with the now familiar tale of Lila and the Mustang, some calling her a miracle, others shrugging it off as a fluke. The shop's wooden tables and fogged windows framed their chat, a snapshot of small-town life where news traveled faster than the wind. Hank's truck rattled down Oak Ridge Road, pulling up to the Wilson farm where Lila knelt in the lettuce patch, her boots caked with dirt, her face shadowed with caution. The farm was a patchwork of struggle, its small garden and sagging chicken coop dwarfed by the towering oak James had planted, the family tree standing proud under the noon sun. The air carried the faint scent of dry grass, a quiet hymn to rural endurance. Hank knocked on the wooden door, its peeling paint a testament to years of want, and when Lila looked up, her hand instinctively went to her father's military medal, its weight a shield against strangers. "I'm Hank Thompson," he said, his voice rough but kind, his eyes warm in a way that stirred memories of James. "Heard about you in that Mustang. Takes a special heart to calm a beast like that." Lila stepped back wary, but the sincerity in his gaze held her, a flicker of her father's strength mirrored in this weathered man. Under the oak's broad shade, Hank shared his story, his hands tracing the air as he spoke of years training horses, of understanding their wild spirits. "Only a few can look a stallion in the eye and make it listen," he said, his voice steady, his eyes locking onto Lila's. "You've got that gift." The wind rustled the oak's leaves, carrying the earthy scent of the farm, a moment of connection rooted in the rural heartland. Hank saw his daughter lost a decade ago in Lila's quiet resilience, and the pain of that loss fueled his resolve to help her. Lila listened, her fingers brushing Clara's embroidered handkerchief, her doubts softening as she sensed his honesty. Later she would write in her journal, "He looked at me like Dad used to." The words were a bridge linking her past to a possible future. Hank left a carrot on the fence, a small gesture, and turned to his truck, his parting words lingering. "You can do more than you think, kid." The engine roared, kicking up dust as he drove off, the sunlight glinting on the Wilson farm, a promise of new beginnings. Lila stood by the oak, clutching her mother's handkerchief, a spark of hope igniting within her. She wasn't ready to trust fully, but Hank's faith in her was a seed, planted in the fertile ground of her courage, ready to grow. The first rays of dawn bathed the Wilson farm in a soft golden glow, the air crisp with the promise of a new day. As Hank Thompson's rusty pickup truck rumbled up the dirt path, The truck laden with new ropes and reins creaked to a stop by the sagging wooden fence, its weathered frame, a mirror to the farm's own hard-worn charm. The pasture stretched green and quiet, dotted with dew-kissed grass, while the old oak tree, James's family tree, stood sentinel, its leaves whispering in the morning breeze. Hank stepped out, his boots crunching on the gravel, his eyes scanning the modest garden where Lila knelt picking lettuce with careful hand. He leaned against the fence, his weathered face softening, and called out, "Morning, Lila." His voice, rough but kind, carried the weight of a man who'd seen both triumphs and losses. "I've got a proposition for you," he said, holding up a new rein, its leather gleaming in the sunlight. "Come to my ranch, learn to work with horses. You've got a gift, girl, one I haven't seen in years." Inside the wooden house, Maggie sat in her creaky rocking chair, her cough quieter today but her eyes sharp as she listened to Hank's off. The kitchen, with its chipped table and faint scent of last night's cornbread, was a haven of simplicity, the morning light filtering through a cracked window to warm her lined face. "This is a chance from your daddy, Lila," she said, her voice steady despite the ache of remembering James, who'd loved horses as a boy. "He'd want you to take it." Maggie's gaze lingered on Lila, seeing her son's fire in the girl's quiet strength, a spark of hope igniting for the granddaughter she'd raised through years of grief. Lila stood by the garden, her boots sunk in the soft earth, her hand slipping to the embroidered handkerchief in her pocket. Clara's only legacy since her death 12 years ago. Doubt gnawed at her. She was just a farm girl, not a horse trainer, and the fear of failure loomed large. "What if I'm not good enough?" she murmured, her fingers tracing the handkerchief's faded flowers, seeking her mother's courage. Maggie's words echoed in Lila's mind, stirring memories of her father's voice, lost to a battlefield but never forgotten. "Try, Lila, even just one." The medal in her pocket, James's military honor, felt heavier, a reminder of his belief in her. She looked at Hank, his eyes warm like her father's, and felt a flicker of possibility. The farm was still, the chirping of sparrows a gentle chorus, and the sunlight on the family trees seemed to nod in approval. "Okay, Mr. Hank," Lila said, her voice small but resolute. "I'll try." The words were a vow, a step toward a future she couldn't yet see, and she tied Clara's handkerchief around her wrist, its soft fabric a talisman for the journey ahead. Later she would open her journal, its pages worn from nightly confessions, and write, "I'll learn for Dad, for Grandma." The act of writing steadied her, a quiet promise to honor the family that shaped her. Hank's face broke into a rare smile, his eyes bright with a father's pride, though he'd never say it aloud. "I'll teach you everything I know, kid," he promised, his voice rough but earnest, as if seeing his lost daughter in Lila's determined gaze. He turned to his truck, the engine coughing to life, and drove off, leaving a trail of dust that shimmered in the morning light. The Wilson farm stood quiet, its sagging fences and modest garden a testament to endurance, but the air felt different now, charged with the possibility of change. Lila lingered by the oak, her fingers brushing the handkerchief, her heart alight with a fragile hope. She imagined Hank's ranch, its white fences and rolling pastures vivid in her mind, a place where she might find not just skill but purpose. The sparrows sang on and the family tree's shadow stretched long, as if reaching for the future. Lila was only beginning to embrace. The morning air was crisp as Lila Wilson walked the winding path to Thompson's horse ranch, her boots kicking up soft clouds of dust on Oak Ridge Road. At 15, she carried a mix of nerves and hope, her mother's embroidered handkerchief tucked in her pocket, its faded flowers a quiet reminder of Clara, gone since Lila was 3. The sun climbed higher, bathing the rolling hills in golden light, and the ranch came into view, a sprawl of white fences, sturdy wooden barns, and lush green pastures that hummed with the life of rural America. Sparrows chirped in the distance, their song a gentle welcome, while the scent of fresh hay drifted on the breeze. Hank Thompson stood by the barn, his weathered face breaking into a grin as he waved her over. "Ready to learn, kid?" he called, his voice rough but warm, holding out a brush and a carrot. He led her inside, the barn's cool shade enveloping them, and began teaching her to groom a horse, his hands steady as he showed her how to move with patience. "Horses feel your heart," he said. "Stay calm and they'll trust you." Lila's fingers trembled as she brushed a gentle mare, her doubt whispering that she wasn't cut out for this.
She touched her father's military medal, James's legacy from a battlefield 2 years gone, and heard his voice. "Try, Lila." The words steadied her, pushing back the fear of failure that had haunted her since the Mustang. Hank watched closely, his eyes soft with recognition. She reminded him of his daughter lost years ago, a wound that drove him to guide Lila to redeem his own past mistakes. He saw in her a rare spark, a chance to pass on what he'd learned in a lifetime of taming wild spirit. The barn's wooden walls, fragrant with hay, and the soft nickering of horses, created a sanctuary, a place where Lila's uncertainties began to loosen, replaced by the rhythm of the work. Her lessons deepened as Hank taught her to stand still, to meet a horse's gaze with quiet confidence. Her voice low and soothing as she practiced with a chestnut gelding. Her hands shook at first, but the horse's calm response steadied her. A small victory that warmed her heart. Then a familiar figure emerged from the barn's shadows. Valor, the ferocious Mustang from the Baker farm pen, his powerful frame unmistakable. Lila's breath caught, and she called out, "Valor," her voice bright with recognition. The stallion's ears flicked, his dark eyes locking onto hers, a silent acknowledgement of their shared moment in the pen. "We meet again," she whispered, her hand reaching out, feeling James's presence in the horse's steady gaze. Valor was more than a beast to her. He was a bridge to her father, a symbol of strength forged in pain. Hank, watching, felt a jolt of surprise at their bond, his voice gentle as he guided her. "Stroke him slow, Lila," he said, his patience fatherly, his belief in her unwavering. The sunlight streamed through the barn slats, dust motes dancing in the air, as Lila's fingers brushed Valor's coarse mane, a connection that felt like coming home. Days passed and Lila grew bold, leading horses across the ranch's sprawling pastures, learning to read their signals. The flick of an ear, the swish of a tail, the wind swept through the fields, carrying the song of sparrows and the steady rhythm of hooves. A symphony of freedom that lifted her spirit. Her self-doubt began to fade, each lesson a step toward confidence, as if Valor and Hank were weaving a new strength into her soul. At night she opened her journal, its page as a canvas for her thoughts, and penned a poem about Valor, calling him "my father's flame," wild but true. She shared it with Miss Harper, her teacher, who read it with a smile. "You've got a storyteller's gift, Lila," Harper said, her words sparking a glow in Lila's heart. "Keep writing." The praise was a beacon, urging Lila to see herself as more than a farm girl, to dream of a future where her voice could soar. As the sun dipped low, painting the ranch in hues of amber, Lila stood beside Valor, her hand resting on his mane, their bond a quiet miracle. The pastures stretched endless before her, the white fences gleaming under the fading light, a canvas for the life she was beginning to build. She whispered to herself, "Valor is dad, is me is hope," her words a vow to embrace the journey ahead. The ranch was alive with possibility, and Lila felt ready, her heart open to the lessons that awaited. The afternoon sun hung low over Thompson's horse ranch, its golden light filtering through the broad leaves of a towering oak. As Hank Thompson invited Lila to sit on a weathered bench beneath its shade, he poured strong coffee from a thermos, the rich aroma mingling with the earthy scent of the pastures. A moment of intimacy carved out in the heart of rural America. The fields stretched green and quiet, the distant whinny of horses, a soft underscore to the wind's gentle rustle. Hank's face was etched with lines of hardship, his eyes distant as he began to speak, his voice low and heavy like a man unearthing buried pain. "Got a story to tell you, Lila," he said, his gaze fixed on the horizon as if seeing ghosts in the fading light. Lila settled beside him, clutching her cough, her fingers brushing Clara's embroidered handkerchief, its presence a comfort as she sensed Hank's words would echo her own losses. Hank's story unfolded like a worn tapestry, each word heavy with memory. "I was a big name once," he said, his hands tracing the air. "Trained horses won ribbon, had folks lining up to learn from me, but a single moment shattered it all. A panicked horse, a powerful man's son injured, and Hank took the blame, his reputation crumbling like dry earth." The barn shadows seemed to listen, the soft nickering of horses, a quiet echo of his past triumph. "The real wound though was deeper. Lost my daughter," he said, his voice breaking in a car wreck 10 years back. The pain of that loss had sealed him off, left him wandering in solitude, A man adrift without purpose. Lila's eyes stung. Her own grief for James and Clara rised, her hand tightening around her father's military medal, its weight a shared anchor in their sorrow. Hank looked at Lila, his gaze softening, seeing in her the spark his daughter once carried. "You're why I'm back at this," he said, his voice firm. "You've got something special, a heart that speaks to horses, to people. I want to teach you everything." His promise was a vow warm like a father's, offering her a path to greatness, a chance to redeem his own failures. The sun sank lower, its golden rays gilding the oak, a beacon of hope amidst their shared pain. Lila felt a kinship, a bond forged in loss, and knew Hank saw her not just as a student but as family. The pastures glowed, the world quiet, save for the horses' soft calls as if urging them forward. Lila reached into her bag, pulling out a small sketch of Valor, its lines capturing the stallion's fierce grace. "Thank you, Miss Hank," she said, her voice soft. "Like you're my dad." She handed him the drawing, a gift that sealed their connection. Hank's eyes glistened, his fingers tracing the sketch, and he nodded, too moved to speak. Lila would later write in her journal, "Mr. Hank helped me find my light." As night fell, the moon rose over the ranch, its silver glow bathing the fields, a promise of the journey they would share, two souls healing through the bond of horses and hope. The Thompson Horse Ranch hummed with life under the morning sun, its emerald pastures stretching wide, framed by crisp white fences that gleamed like promises. Lila Wilson at 15 sat astride Valor, the Mustang stallion, whose fierce had once terrified her in the Baker farm pen. Now under Hank Thompson's steady guidance she urged Valor forward, her hands tight on the reins as they approached a wooden hurdle in the training field. The air was rich with the scent of fresh hay, the wind carrying the faint buzz of rural America, where the rhythm of hooves and the rustle of grass were a daily hymn. Hank stood by the fence, his weathered face etched with focus, calling out, "Keep your eyes up, Lila." His voice was a lifeline, pulling her through the challenge. Valor surged, leaping the hurdle, but Lila's balance faltered and she tumbled to the ground, dust clinging to her patched jeans. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, the fall a sharp reminder of her inexperience. She brushed dirt from her hands, her fingers finding her father's military medal in her pocket. James's voice echoing from 2 years past, "Courage is getting up after you fall." The words steadied, pushing back the self-doubt that whispered she'd never be good enough for the Willow County Fair. Hank clapped his hands, his grin wide and fatherly. "That's it, Lila. Falling's just learning. Get back on," he said, his voice warm, carrying the patience of a man who saw in her the daughter he'd lost a decade ago. His belief fueled her, a quiet fire that burned away her fears. Lila remounted Valor, her movements sure, and they cleared the next hurdle, the stallion's strength a mirror to her growing resolve. Across town at the Wilson farm, Maggie sat in the dim kitchen, her trembling hands stitching an old piece of fabric into a riding shirt for Lila. The sunlight streamed through the window, catching the dust motes and illuminating the family tree oak outside, its branches swaying gently. Maggie's eyes blurred with memory, recalling James riding horses at county fairs, his laughter filling their home before the war claimed him. "Keep her safe," she whispered, a prayer to her son, her needle weaving love into every scene. The house with its sagging walls and chipped table was a testament to their struggles, but Maggie's heart swelled with hope for Lila's chance to shine. The news of Lila's entry in the fair spread through the town, like a summer breeze stirring both scorn and curiosity. In the Maple Square coffee shop, the air thick with the scent of waffles and brewing coffee, a group of locals leaned over their mugs, their laughter sharp. "That veggie girl thinks she can ride with the big shot," one sneered, his voice echoing off the wooden tables, a cruel reminder of the taunts Lila had faced at the market. The words filtered back to her stinging as she passed through Maple Square, her head bowed to avoid the mocking glances. Yet she returned to the ranch each day, her boots kicking up dust, her resolve unbroken. At night she poured her heart into her journal, writing, "They laugh but I'll make Dad proud." Her mother's embroidered handkerchief, Clara's legacy, rested in her palm, its faded flowers urging her to press on. In a quiet corner of the town, 10-year-old Lily overheard the rumors, her eyes wide with awe. She sat at home sketching Lila, atop a horse, whispering, "I'll see you at the fair," her small hands crafting a tribute to the girl she admired. As the fair drew near, Lila stood at the Thompson Ranch, the morning sun casting long shadows across the vibrant pastures. She wore the shirt Maggie had sewn, its stitches a testament to love, and ran her hand along Valor's mane, feeling the stallion's strength beneath her touch. The ranch was alive with promise, its white fences and rolling fields a canvas for her dreams. Hank watched from the sidelines, his nod a silent vow that she was ready. Lila's heart raced, but her grip on the reins was firm, her spirit steeled by the memory of James, of Maggie's faith, of Valor's She was no longer just the orphaned girl from the Wilson farm. She was a contender, ready to face the Willow County Fair with courage forged in the fires of her past. The Willow County Fair burst with color and sound, as Lila Wilson rode Valor into the arena, the morning sun glinting off the Mustang's sleek coat. At 15 she wore the patched riding shirt Grandma Maggie had sewn, its stitches a quiet testament to love, and her heart thrummed with a mix of nerves and resolve. The fairgrounds were a vibrant tapestry of rural America. American flags fluttered proudly above packed wooden bleachers, the air rich with the scent of hay and warm apple pies, children waving balloons in a riot of red, white, and blue. The crowd's murmur filled the space, their eyes fixed on the girl once mocked as Mud Girl. Hank Thompson stood at the arena's edge, his weathered hands checking Valor's reins, his voice steady as he leaned close. "Just be you, Lila," he said, his eyes warm with a father's pride. "Valor, I'll feel it." Lila nodded, her fingers brushing her father's military medal. James's legacy, from a battlefield 2 years gone. She looked to the sky, its vast blue, a canvas for her hopes, and whispered, "I'll make you proud, Dad." On the bleachers, 10-year-old Lily clutched her sketch of Lila on horseback, her eyes shining with hope, willing her hero to triumph. The arena gates swung open and Lila urged Valor forward, his hooves pounding the dirt as they charged toward the first hurdle. The crowd fell silent, their breath held as horse and riders soared over the wooden bar, landing with a thud that echoed in Lila's chest. The bleachers erupted cheers, mingling with the twang of country music blaring from speakers, balloons bobbing as children waved frantically. Valor galloped on, his power a pulse beneath her, but the second hurdle loomed, and his stride faltered, hooves skimming the bar. Lila's heart her hands tightening on the reins, her body braced for a fall. Hank's words rang clear, "Horses feel your heart." She steadied her breath, focusing on Valor's rhythm, feeling James's presence in the stallion's strength. "We've got this," she murmured, her voice a thread of trust weaving them together. They cleared the hurdle, the crowd's roar swelling, a wave of sound that carried her forward. The final run was a blur, Lila and Valor moving as one, crossing the finish line to a storm of applause. She hadn't won the top score, but the crowd's fervor said something greater had been achieved. Lily was the first to leap up, her small hands clapping wildly as she shouted, "Lila's amazing." Her voice, bright and clear, sparked a chain reaction, the bleachers rising in a standing ovation, their cheers drowning out the music's lively strum. The sun bathed the arena, American flags snapping in the breeze, as families who'd once scoffed now joined the applause, their faces softened by respect. Mrs. Carter, who'd dismissed Lila's lettuces, rustic, bowed her head, her earlier disdain replaced by quiet shame. Hank strode into the arena, his boots kicking up dust, and raised a hand to quiet the crowd. "This girl," he declared, his voice booming with pride, "is worth more than any medal." His words, warm like a father's, wrapped around Lila, who stood beside Valor, her eyes glistening as she looked skyward. The clouds parted and she felt James's smile, a warmth that told her she'd won, not just the crowd, but her own heart. The pain of the pen, the taunts, the losses, they hadn't broken her. She'd risen, stronger, whole. Lila led Valor from the arena, her steps light despite the dust on her boots. The crowd's applause, a melody that lifted her spirit. Lily darted forward, her small hands offering a bouquet of wildflowers, her face beaming. "You were like a storybook hero," she said, pressing the flowers into Lila's arms. The fairgrounds sparkled, children chasing balloons, the scent of pies mingling with the earthy tang of the arena, a celebration of rural life that now embraced Lila as one of its own. She smiled at the crowd, her heart full, knowing this moment was a turning point. That night she opened her journal, its pages a sanctuary for her triumphs. And "I made Dad proud today and I'll keep going." The words were a vow, a promise to carry her courage forward, to build on the strength she'd found in valor, in Hank, in herself. The fair's lights glowed beyond the horizon, a beacon of the change Lila had sparked, a legacy that would echo far beyond the bleachers. In the dead of night, Ryan sat alone in his darkened room, the glow of his phone casting harsh shadows across his face. The crickets' chorus outside his window was a faint hum, drowned by the pounding of his heart as he hesitated, his thumb hovering over the screen. The video of Lila Wilson in the Baker farm pen, her small figure facing the ferocious Mustang, played on loop, a haunting reminder of his role in her torment. Guilt gnawed at him, memories of his own childhood bullying resurfacing, and with a trembling hand, he uploaded the footage to the town's social media group, typing a simple caption, "This is the truth." The post went live, and within hours it spread like wildfire, shared across screens in homes and coffee shops, igniting a storm of outrage. Comments flooded in demanding justice for the orphaned girl who'd faced cruelty with courage, the town's collective voice rising in her. To Ryan's chest tightened, torn between remorse for joining Ethan's scheme and fear of his leader's wrath. But a flicker of relief warmed him. He'd taken a step toward righting his wrong. By morning the video reached the town's sheriff, who watched it in his cramped office, the fluorescent lights buzzing over an old wooden desk scarred by years of use. The grainy footage showed Lila's brave, undeniable and stark, and the sheriff's jaw tightened as he issued summons for Ethan Carter and his group. Ethan, summoned to the station, stood pale and defiant, his tailored shirt rumpled as he stammered excuses. It was just a prank, he insisted. But the video's clarity, Lila's trembling voice, the men's cruel laughter, left no room for denial. The office's stark walls and flickering lights amplified the gravity of his situation, his arrogance crumbling under the weight of evidence. Ryan, called in as a witness, felt Ethan's glare like a blade, the older man's anger a palpable threat. Yet as Ryan admitted his part, a quiet relief settled over him, the act of truth-telling easing the guilt that had festered since the pen. He'd faced Ethan's wrath, but found a shred of redemption in doing what was right. The town gathered that evening at the First Baptist, its wooden pews filled with familiar faces, the air heavy with the scent of wax and the soft strains of a hymn. A large screen flickered to life, projecting the video for all to see, and a hush fell as Lila's small figure stood resolute against the Mustang's fury. The crowd, once quick to mock her as Veggie Girl, sat in stunned silence, their heads bowed as the truth sank in. The church's stained glass windows glowed under moonlight, the hymn's melody a solemn backdrop to their introspection. Lila sat beside Maggie, her grandmother's hand warm in her, the memory of the pen's terror resurfacing as the video played. Yet as she watched herself face valor, a lightness bloomed within her. Justice was coming, a balm for the wounds she'd carried. Maggie's eyes glistened, her pride in Lila a quiet strength, her cough softer in the sacred space. The video's reach grew, spilling beyond the town's borders, catching the eye of regional news outlets that hailed Lila's courage. The church's bell tolled as the gathering ended, its echo a promise of change. The moonlight bathing the building in a silver glow. The town, stirred by the truth, began to shift, its heart turning toward the girl who'd shown them what bravery meant. Days after the videos spread, the Wilson farm buzzed with new life, its dusty pastures transformed by the laughter of children led by 10-year-old, who arrived with a tin of homemade cookies, her eyes wide with admiration. "Can you teach us about horses, Lila?" she asked, her voice bright as kids scampered across the green fields, their joy a stark contrast to the farm's usual quiet. The sun bathed the landscape, the family tree casting a protective shade, its branches swaying in a gentle breeze. Locals, once skeptical of Lila, now came bearing gifts, baskets of carrots and apples,
their voices soft with apologies for past scorn. "We were wrong about you," one said, her head bowed, the weight of their earlier taunts lifting in the warmth of newfound respect. The farm, with its sagging fences and weathered house, felt alive, a heart beating with the community's awakening. In the kitchen, Lila unfolded a letter from a national horse training center, its crisp paper glowing under the firelight of the wood stove. The words invited her to visit, recognizing her exceptional talent with horses, a validation that brought a shy smile to her face. Maggie beamed, her cough quieter, As she squeezed Lila's hand, Miss Harper arrived, clutching Lila's poem about valor, her voice warm with praise. "This is beautiful, Lila," she said, urging her to submit it to a magazine. "You're a storyteller." Lila's cheeks flushed, pride mingling with humility, and she wrote in her journal that night, "I'm on Dad's path now." The memory of James, lost to war, felt alive in her achievements. A dream unfolding through her courage. Lily lingered after the others, pressing a crayon drawing of valor into Lila's hands. "You're my hero," she said, her voice earnest. Her dream of training horses sparked by Lila's example. The girl's admiration was a mirror, reflecting Lila as a beacon for the young, a sisterly figure in a community learning to heal. The pastures glowed under the setting sun, children's laughter echoing, the oak tree standing tall as a symbol of their bond. Lila stood beside Maggie, feeling the town's love like a warm embrace, her resolve firm to spread kindness as her parents would have wanted. The farm, once a place of struggle, now pulsed with hope, its horizon painted red with the promise of a brighter future. The Wilson farm, once a quiet refuge of struggle, bloomed with new life as Lila Wilson launched her project, side by side, horses and hearts. At 15, she transformed the weathered homestead into a vibrant hub, its pastures now dotted with children brushing gentle ponies under her patient guidance. A new barn stood proud beside the old, its wood gleaming under the sun, and a hand-carved sign bearing the project's name hung above the gate, a symbol of renewal. The fields stretched green and inviting, kissed by morning dew, their serenity a stark contrast to the farm's hard scrabble past. Young Lily, her eyes bright with admiration, led her friends in learning to groom horses, giggling as they fed carrots to a chestnut mare, while adults from town joined in, drawn by Lila's quiet courage. The farm pulsed with community spirit, laughter echoing where silence once reigned, a testament to the change Lila had sparked. For Lila, this was more than a project, it was a vow kept to her parents, James and Clara, lost to war and illness, a way to sow hope in others as they had in her. Each lesson she taught, each smile she earned, felt like a step toward honoring their memory. The air turned festive as Lila hosted a grand celebration at the farm, the fields alight with lanterns strung from the family tree oak, their golden glow dancing in the evening breeze. Tables groaned under heaps of cornbread and roasted corn, the twang of bluegrass music filling the night, a quintessentially American revelry that drew the town together. Children darted through the grass, their laughter mingling with the crackle of a bonfire, its flames casting warmth on faces once hardened by doubt. Lila stepped onto a wooden stage, her patched riding shirt a badge of her journey, and read a poem she'd written about James, her voice steady but soft. "He was my fire, my guide," she recited, her words painting a soldier's love, a father's strength, until tears glistened in the crowd's eyes, their hearts stirred by her grace. Mrs. Carter, who'd once scorned Lila's market stall, stepped forward, her voice choked. "I'm sorry, Lila," she said, embracing her, the apology a bridge over past wrong. Lila felt a family in the crowd's embrace, a belonging that healed old wounds. Later she wrote in her journal, "I did it, Mom, Dad. I found our family." The crowd grew hushed as Lily presented a medal to Hank Thompson, the town's way of thanking the grizzled trainer who'd guided Lila's path. Hank's eyes reddened, his rough hands trembling as he accepted the honor. Seeing in Lila the daughter he'd lost years ago, "This girl brought me back to life," he said, his voice thick, the bluegrass music swelling to underscore the moment. The lantern's light bathed his face, etching pride into his weathered lines. A man reborn through Lila's triumphs. Lila hugged him, her words simple but profound. "You're my family, Mr. Hank." The embrace sealed a bond forged in shared loss, a father and daughter found in spirit. The firelight flickered, the music weaving through the night as the town celebrated not just Lila but the man who'd helped her shine. As the festival wound down, the crowd drifted home, leaving the Wilson farm bathed in moonlight, its fields quiet but alive with the echoes of joy. The stars blazed above a canvas of possibility, and the cricket song heralded a new chapter. Lila stood by the oak, her hand on its rough bark, feeling the weight of her journey from the pen's terror to the fair's triumph, from loss to love. She turned pain into hope, a legacy for her parents, and knew she'd carry it forward, her heart full of the community she'd built. The Wilson farm stood as a beacon in the months that followed, its new barns and vibrant pastures a testament to transformation. Children like Lily flocked to learn from Lila, their hands gentle as they brushed horses, their laughter a melody of courage inspired by her story. The farm, once a symbol of hardship, had become a healing ground, its green fields and sturdy fences alive with lessons in resilience. The family tree oak watched over it all, its branches stretching wide, rooted deep in the soil of hope Lila had nurtured. Lila and Hank worked side by side, their mission clear, teaching not just horsemanship, but the strength to rise above fear, a legacy that drew families from across the county. Lila, no longer the orphaned girl of whispers, became a symbol of hope, her story a light for the town. She dreamed of writing a book, weaving her journey from the Mustang pen to the fair's triumph, a way to share the kindness her parents had instilled. The night sky above the farm sparkled with stars, each a promise of the future she envisioned, her words a gift to generations yet to come. The fields glowed under moonlight, the air sweet with possibility as Lila's vision took root, a testament to her unbreakable spirit. The town, once divided by scorn, grew tight-knit, its people united by Lila's example. They looked to her, a girl who turned pain into purpose and found inspiration for their own lives, passing her courage to their children. Lila stood by the oak one evening, her eyes tracing the star, feeling James and Clara's smiles in the quiet. She was ready for what lay ahead, her heart a compass guiding her toward a horizon. The Wilson farm, a living legacy of love and resilience, truly means the world to us.